Jonathan says, when using intensifiers such as slow negatives or static contractions, how do you know when enough is enough? Is there a sticking point in lift, or is the pain level we shouldn't exceed? I think I would, and I don't want to be pedantic, exercise should be extremely uncomfortable. Pain, I think we have to be careful with that word because lactic acid buildup can certainly be extremely uncomfortable and possibly painful. But there are different types of pain. So I'm always a little careful about that word. I think I generally say that exercise should never be painful, but it should be extremely uncomfortable. How would you know when you've done enough if using things like slow negative static contractions? For most people, again, my mentality, I like pushing that envelope as hard as I can, period. And if I have a training partner, I will have them help me do force repetitions, heavy negatives until I can't lift my arms or until I can't move my legs. And then that one set is done and that muscle group is done. But that's me. If I'm working with clients, I sprinkle those in really, really gingerly. And the way that I like to do it, and again, I lift very, very slowly. And I generally use a set duration with most people between 60 and 90 seconds. And there are reasons for that I won't elaborate on too long. But in general, if I have somebody that hits positive failure between 60 and 90 seconds, then I know that the weight that I'm using, the way that I train, is a good amount of weight for them. But if they hit that degree of failure, concentric failure, they're trying to lift it, it's not moving at 75 seconds, then I make everybody I have basically work up to 90 seconds. And I think it just makes the workouts a little bit more consistent. And it gives them a little bit of nuance that there's a little bit more intensity, a little bit more effort that they can give. In a lot of ways, you make them see that they're capable of more than they may think they're capable of doing. So if they hit concentric failure at 75 seconds, I will note that in the progress chart after the set, and I time everything with a stopwatch, but then I will make them statically hold that for the last 15 seconds. Or if it starts going down, I'll make them lower that as slowly as they can. Or if they hit that a little closer to the 60-second mark and I want to stretch that set to 90 seconds, that's when I'll start doing more forced repetitions or heavy negatives. If you're at the point in your training where you are legitimately able to do slow negatives or static contractions, you're probably training hard enough. And I said earlier in this podcast that I think these intensifiers make a disproportionately large inroad to your recovery ability. So if you can normally train 3 days a week, and then you start doing set intensifiers on literally every single set, pushing that as much intensity as you're capable of generating, I don't think you can train 3 times a week like that. I think, at that point, you might only be able to train twice a week, or depending on your genetics, you can maybe only train once a week doing that style of training, maybe even less frequently than that. So Matt, the same client that I mentioned earlier, that I had him doing isometric holds and then heavy negatives on his bench press, at the end of our time together, he was only doing 6 total sets once every 10 to 14 days. But it wasn't until I got him down to being that infrequent that he continued to make progress. So these are things that have to be used with consideration. How is this going to fit into somebody's lifestyle? Is this going to make them so tired and exhausted either the rest of the day or possibly the next day or two that they're not going to want to come back? Intensifiers are interesting that way. Like I said, I like pushing my sets as hard as I can every single set. But for most people, I think it's just a tool to give perspective that people can work harder than they think they can.